There's one request I always expect to see whenever I review a leverless controller on this channel. The controller could be ticking off a laundry list of features, but someone will always comment these two magical words: split layout. And I agree with that. The Tiki-Taka I reviewed a few months ago took a shot at this layout in the acrylic sandwich form factor, but for my taste it was lacking some important features. Meanwhile, Duelpad has been cooking. The Zen 16 I'm showing you today aims to give us every feature we want and expect from a leverless controller in late 2024, along with this coveted split layout. So let's dive in and see if we can have our cake and eat it with the Duelpad Zen. Hello friends, welcome back to another video. Thank you to everyone out there who are already subscribed. Each one of you are making a massive difference to the channel, but there are still 95% of you viewers out there who have not clicked the subscribe button. So if you're still on the fence, let's play a game. Pick a number between 1 and 16. I will be spinning my Lauti Carnival throughout the video, and if the ruby bead lands on your number, congrats, you get to click the subscribe button. If the silver bead lands on your number, just hit the like button for me so the video gets a boost on the algorithm. You can either stick to your number or change it every round, and if you don't get a match, maybe I will catch you next time. Finally, I want to say thanks to Duelpad for sending this over to me for review. No instructions were given and all opinions are my own. Let's start off by talking about the layout of the Zen 16. So with traditional arcade sticks, there's usually a lever on the left side for directional controls. On a leverless, this is replaced by buttons. So we have left, down, right, and up. Think of up as jump for fighting games. But we have a choice of where to place the jump on a split layout because we have two big buttons down here. And this also allows the hands to be spaced further apart to make things more comfortable. However, Duelpad didn't just slap a split layout on this and go, oh, we're done. If we look closer, we can see a lot more thought went into this than initially meets the eye. First of all, the buttons have a deep slant to follow the natural angle of our wrists. That means there's less of this unnatural wrist bending going on. On other controllers, the buttons will be more in line, and this X button is usually further along over here. For reference, this is the top plate of an R16 by Hot 42. The M2 button on the left and the RS button on the right are spaced differently in relation to the jump buttons. At first glance, this might look like poor quality control or a mistake to tickle your OCD, but even this choice has purpose behind it. It's further away because if you're a right thumb jumper and use your thumb for cross and circle like I do, the path is completely clear and there's little chance of snagging this by accident. You have to throw your thumb across to get it. I think it's really cool that Duelpad even considered this because it shows they know gamers have preferences. And they haven't discriminated against us right thumb jumpers out there. All three of us. Left thumb jumpers don't have the same issues of sharing the thumb with other buttons, so the M2 is as close as possible. And that's the same story for the spacing in general. It's all placed so close that some of the rims are touching. Whether you like the spacing and layout is down to preference, but it's clear to see that Duelpad has put a lot of thought into the ergonomics and placement of these buttons. And it's not all about where we're touching things. The Zen has another interesting feature under its sleeve. This button here is not a button. It's actually a little control stick to access some of the key GP2040 features. To activate it, just click on it once and a menu will pop up where we can change the profile mode, SLCD settings, the input mode and other stuff. It's really good for players like myself who can never remember all of the hotkeys to change these options on the fly. And it makes troubleshooting much easier without the need to plug it into a computer to access the web configurator. It's best to pinch this with the index finger and thumb for accuracy, and when we're done, we just need to save and exit at the bottom. This RGB button up here scrolls through the presets for the back LEDs. There's many to choose from, and even though the back plate is slightly frosted, this thing still lights up like a Christmas tree. The LEDs at the front of the controller are strong as well, and from certain angles can be blinding because the east and west placement comes through the gaps. If this bothers you, the LEDs can be turned off. The function buttons are spread out into both corners with these big square caps. They work best when activating them on the south side of the cap, but in general they do feel wobbly. It has every feature you would hope a GP2040 controller to have. It's got an onboard authentication port for PS5 and Series X support, 2 USB sockets, as well as everything I mentioned earlier. For my OCD bros, the two jump buttons, the screen and the function buttons are symmetrical and neat enough to anchor the controller visually. Now the shape is quite unique, and again it's been thoughtfully and purposefully designed. I mentioned earlier that the buttons are slanted to support a more natural approach for the hands, and the chin down here is angled outwards to align with that. There's also a drop along the forehead which makes access to the ports much quicker and comfortable to reach. Again, these are simple but effective choices that align with the Duelpad Zen's ethos of being an ergonomic controller, and they also help to make the controller visually smaller. In terms of the quality of the body, it seemed very creaky during the first few days after I unboxed it, but that seems to have gone away now after it settled down into the environment. I know that sounds weird, but there's no other way I can explain it. In the early days, it would snap, crackle and pop without me even touching it. It would just make noises sitting on my desk. Now, it only really makes a noise when I pick it up and bend it. It's probably something to do with the acrylic plates tightening and cooling down during shipping and then gradually expanding in room temperature. Finally, I just want to commend Duelpad for including some good tools in the package. The keycap and switch puller works well. It comes with a good right angled cable that has a small footprint on both ends. And finally, some extra screws, keycaps and a switch. The Duelpad Zen comes in a crystal variant and a matte black option. The matte black is opaque, so art will not show up, and it comes with an orange screen controller for extra pop. You can probably add art to the bottom of the black one, and I think the LEDs will still be effective because they're lined near the edges of the controller, and as I mentioned before, very strong indeed. With both the crystal and matte black variants, the keycaps are good and I wouldn't personally change them. These cooker grill style buttons seem to be all the rage these days. I'm not sure why they're so popular, but feel free to educate me in the comments. The action buttons are 23mm and the jump buttons are 25mm. I think they look cool and play with the LED lights in a fun way. These keycap sizes are quite easy to source, so if you want to change them, you can find some on AliExpress or go for the Hot 42 ones, links in the description. The rims can be popped off the top plate, and if you love the controller enough to own both variants, it's possible to mix and match the rims. The function buttons use a square shaped pin, but the good news is that the knobs with round gates are easy to source and will fit these no problem. If you have a collection of Hot 42 controllers, you also have a bunch of spares already. A major win for the Duelpad Zen is the stock switches. The crystal model comes fitted with KO White Rain and the matte black variant is fitted with KO Low Free Ghosts. They're both linear switches and on paper the stats look identical. They sound and feel good to me, and if they were not already in the controller, I would be happy to install them myself. They're definitely better than the usual red stock switches included with most other controllers in my opinion. I still regard wind engine switches at the top of the pile, but as always, this stuff is down to preference. Unfortunately, during the making of this video, I accidentally stripped 2 of the screws on my Crystal Zen, which means I am locked out of art modding this controller. I really wanted to show this to you with some Stellar Blade art, but that's no longer possible. New batches of the Duelpad Zen will use a different kind of screw, but if you have the first model like myself, please take your time when unscrewing these plates. So for this comparison, I only have the Tiki-Taka available to show as an alternative. The other split layout that's readily available is the Doyle HitPad Pro, and you can check out the links for that one. I don't have it, so I won't talk about it. The Tiki-Taka is an opaque white, so it's not possible to mod the art on this. It comes with KO red switches and nylon button caps. This combination makes the action very light. Potential Switch modders will have to be careful because they've decided to go with the two-pronged connectors instead of cross keycaps. So if you go for something like Wind Engines or Low-Free Ghosts, new cross keycaps will have to be sourced as well. It has 3 USB sockets, so a lot of choice and backup options there, but it doesn't have an onboard authentication port, so PS5 players must use a Brook Wingman and not a smaller footprint authenticator like the Boot of 5. You can see the difference in the slanting between the two. With the Zen, I feel like my index naturally falls over the cross button if I move it vertically, but on the Tiki Taka, the same movement will land my finger on the edge of the cross button. It doesn't have a screen or LED lights, so it's not making full use of the GP2040 capabilities. The things I prefer on the Tiki Taka are the function buttons, which feel better than the wobbly Zen ones, and I also prefer the rubber feet. These are ring style ones that hug the screws and work effectively. The Tiki Taka is not a bad controller, but obviously not as feature rich as the Zen. So I've been enjoying both of these controllers for about a week now, and I've got an idea about the things I like and dislike about them. First of all, the buttons feel very nice to bash. The switches have a good amount of weight, so I can really go hard on them, and they sound creamy and robust whilst I do that. And the split layout delivers. It's comfortable on my hands, probably one of the more natural feeling leverless controllers I've used this year, and that's because of the slanting and small spacing between the buttons. I haven't felt like I have to stretch for any inputs, and the only kind of fatigue I get during play is from using slide techniques, because the buttons sit high so my fingers can snag on the sides. I also get some fatigue from using the stock function caps, because the wobble on them demands extra energy from my fingers. Over time, this small annoyance does add up, especially during training mode. The RGB is a mixed bag for me. I don't like looking down at it because the button LEDs get me right in the eyeballs, but the sheer power of them means that they're effective even in your peripheral vision. I usually talk about how these lights can play with elements on the controller when I'm reviewing other leverless models. With the Duelpad Zen, the lights are interacting with the whole room. I wasn't exaggerating earlier when I said it lights up like a Christmas tree. This thing goes maximum techno. It's very clear that Duelpad wanted to make something special with the Zen. They heard the demand for a reasonably priced, easy to acquire split layout leverless, and they gave us that, but attempted to go above and beyond too. Most GP2040 controllers have a screen, sure, but do they allow you to access and change key options on the fly with that screen? We have backlights on other controllers, yes, but are they cranked up to 11 with loads of presets? And finally, the ergonomics of the Zen. From the slanted split layout, the angled palm rests, and general reachability of everything, it's all very well considered. From a value perspective, you don't even have to think about changing the switches. For some people, the White Rain and Low-Free Ghost are endgame choices, and for good reason. They are nice switches. For my personal taste, there are some misses, and by that I mean the function button caps and the super bright face LEDs. But if those things get too annoying, the caps can be changed and the LEDs turned off. The bottom line is, if you want a GP2040 based split layout controller, it's hard not to strongly consider the Duelpad Zen. Thanks for joining me today for this review. If you have any further questions about this controller, fire away in the comments or join us in the Duelpad Discord channel. If you're interested in picking up the Duelpad Zen, please use my referral links as they really help the channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you want to see my review for a leverless controller using cutting edge switch technology, click on this video.